Hello, magical women, and welcome to this exciting adventure with Lisa Bogle, who is going to take us into the world of Shandara Energy Weaving. So, welcome, Lisa.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to introduce you to Lisa. You may be aware of her already. If you're not, I'll share how I've been journeying with Lisa and why I've brought her here today. Because well, actually, I've known Lisa for a few years now, but more recently, really dived in. I was called to dive in to the Shandara Energy Weaving with Lisa, particularly after hearing one of your stories, which I'd love you to share in a minute, about a powerful experience you had during the massive fires that happened in Australia early this year. So, my experience of Shandara, it has given me so much more access to a deeper level of power within me and the ability to actually contain it and focus my power in a way that I couldn't do before. Obviously we all got the capacity, but I just didn't have the way of being able to contain. I had no problem with like connecting with energy, receiving energy, tapping into energy, but then it all just kind of like felt like it was spilling out. And so the difference that's happened for me through working with you with the Shandara is that it's become so much more potent and focused in the way that I can use energy. That's why I'm excited, because I want all women to be able to do this, right? Powerful women who are changing the world to have access to potent levels of energy.
Okay.
And so, yeah. And so today you're going to be guiding us through how to flourish, thrive, and create, oh my God, miracles with energy.
I am.
You are. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, just to let the women know where you come from, like in terms of, the development of this. But you could even start with I also want to hear the story. I want you to tell the story about the fires, but, how have you started to do this work? How's it developed?
Yeah. So Shandara was an interesting journey. Avalon, you know that I've been doing coaching work and teaching energetics for a lot of years. And several years ago, I was doing this work. I was teaching a lot of energetic parenting work. I was teaching shadow work, shadows of the mother, and a lot of deep coaching. And I had trained in like therapeutic, more psychological, therapeutical modalities for coaching and healing work, right? And I went through a period where all of a sudden I've always got energy, always understood it. I understand the energetics of a situation before I understand the people involved, what's going on. Like, I just get that bit first, right? And I've also always been a really strong channel, right? So I went through a period of my life where for about 9 months, I started having repetitive dreams. And they weren't like the same dream over and over. They would be like almost like a past life review across many ages, right? Like they would just keep traveling. It was like a timeline. And I would get all these snippets and I was like, what the hell is going on, right? I don't know what this is about, right? And then during my conscious hours, all of this new information started coming through that I was channeling. And so I started taking the guidance I was receiving and I just started playing with it for myself. And it was very embodied work. Like there was a lot of embodiment. And so it was really taking the energetics out of like a heady space and into my body, right? And so I started doing that work, and as the months went on and I started to download and channel all of this work, I noticed that my vibration was rising and my moods were evening out. And then I realized feeling like, it's only a month or two in, I was like, I've just been in flow for like ever. Like I'm just like, I can shift my state really fast and life just keeps moving and everything's very like, I would look around and people would be doing these roller coasters. I was like, oh, I'm just cruising through. And my healing skills and my channeling got even stronger. Like things just started escalating. And so I was like, this is pretty great. Like I'm just going to keep toddling along with this. And then my dad got sick. This was a turning point for me where I realized, oh, this is something I can do, right? My dad got really sick. He went into hospital. He had some surgery, and that was fine. And then It was about 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening, and his doctor called me. And I live a couple hours outside of the city, which is where the hospital was. And she said to me, your dad's taken a turn and you need to get in here as fast as possible. And I said, like now? She's like, you can leave it to the morning, but like we're talking like dawn morning. And I was like, oh my God, right? It was really stressful. And it turns out he had developed septicemia as a result of the surgery, which is a sort of a form of toxic blood poisoning. And when I looked it up, it had like a fatality rate of 80%. Like, so it was pretty full on. He'd been moved into intensive care. Everything was dramatic. And so I wove. After I spoke to the doctor, I got off the phone and I went, okay, calm down and get yourself centered. And so I went and wove, and I wove for me primarily. But I realized as I was weaving, because you would know this, Avalon, you build a lot of energy in your body as you do it. And especially if you're already bringing quite a lot of emotional fuel to the situation, you bring even more, you raise even more energy. So I had a lot of energy in my body at the end of the week. I felt more grounded and stable, like I was calmer, and I was in a higher perspective of, well, whatever his path is his path. So I'd kind of made a bit of peace across the weave. But in that process, at the end of the weave, I was like, I've got all this energy, and I just threw it at my dad, essentially, is what happened. I threw it out, and then I went to bed. And the next morning I got up at dawn, and I rang the hospital for an update. I was getting ready to get into the car and make the journey into the city. And I rang, and his doctor, who'd been there all night, got on the phone, and she was astounded. Like, she couldn't explain it, but she said, you're not going to believe it, Lisa. I have no explanation for this, but his blood work did a 180 in the middle of the night, and it returned completely to normal. He's not even in ICU now. He's just on general ward. And I got off the phone and I went, what, that initial thought of, could that have been me? No, that wasn't me. You know, that debate we all have with ourselves. And I realized, no, that actually was freaking me. And that was like a turning point where I went, I don't just weave for me. I can do something with this. Like, this has an external application. So that was like a real evolution. That was the first big one in the work, where I realized, oh man, this can actually be used to do something out in the external world. I already knew it was supporting me, but to do it there, it was like, whoa. So I continued to develop the work for a while. And we fast forward to the fires.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the fire story, because that was the bit I'm like, fuck, I actually need to learn this modality.
Yeah. So I had been weaving for a few years by this point, but this was another leap in the work, I think. So I live in the Blue Mountains in Australia, and during all the fires, we're a vulnerable place anyway. We're in the middle of a giant eucalyptus forest, but we had 3 fire fronts encroaching on us for quite a long period of time. And I live on the back of one of the gorges that was, one of the fire fronts was coming towards us, and it was the Mount Gosper fire, which was one of the biggest fire fronts, right? It took out masses of land, and it actually traveled 100 kilometers to get to me. Like, it just kept getting closer and closer for weeks. It was like coming. And we were told nothing can put this fire out. You know, like at that point, the official stance was, there's nothing we can do. No one can put this out. And it was just burning everything in its path as it came towards us. And so one evening it was due to hit our final containment lines on the other side of our valley. And there were 100 fire trucks, Avalon, 100. They came from everywhere, lined up along the Bells Line of Road in an attempt to stop the fire from breaking that final containment. Because after that containment, my valley is just deep bush. It's pretty much inaccessible. And historically, when the fire gets into that valley, it just means that we have to wait until it comes out the other side and hits what's known here in the mountains as the Black Line, which is just a house or 2 back from me. So pretty much on the back of my property, just a little bit down. And so it was a very windy night. It was crazy, and everyone was listening to the scanners, and we knew that the fireys were having a terrible time. The fire ended up jumping 100 fire trucks, and it still jumped the containment about 11 p.m., right? And it jumped into the valley, and we were all like, oh, like that was it for my village on the other side. We're like, that's it. And we packed our cars, everyone started the evacuation. It was all going, you know. And I did that too. I evacuated. Well, I got my gear together. I packed the car. I didn't wake the kids, but we were on alert, you know. And then I wove. I went and I sat down and I did, well, I didn't sit down obviously, but I wove, right? And I did a really quite a powerful weave that night. Again, I had a lot of emotional fuel to work with, and I had years now of weaving. So I had a lot of skill behind me, and I did a very specific weave. And then I came to the ground at the end of my weave to cast that energy, right? And at that moment, I still, like, I'm not even sure what I'm doing. And I felt inside my body, like I heard myself go, okay, how much can I protect, right? You know, when you're doing energetic work, it's like, oh, if I spread myself too thin, it won't be strong enough. You know, that kind of dilemma. I heard myself in my head go, right, how much can I hold? And I sort of gauged what it was. And I threw the energy from that weave out across the valley into the valley behind me. And then the next day we evacuated and we were gone. I think it was about 2 weeks, no, maybe 10 days. It was, you know, a period of time. And the fire continued to be completely out of control. The wind reports every day were like the worst for my house. Like the fire was being pushed straight at my house, basically. And it was so bad that Mike and I were actually redesigning our new house. Like that's how sure we were our house would go. There was just we were pretty sure. Anyway, it went on, and the fire was completely out of control. Interestingly, I looked at a map later, and the area that I held was about 20 kilometers. And interestingly, to the west, where I said, well, it's too far away, the fire broke containment, sadly took out villages. We lost whole villages, we lost houses, we lost everything. And again, to the east, where I stopped my containment, the fire breached and broke containment there as well. They did get it back under control. But I found it so fascinating to see on a map what that actually, that result. It did not breach at any time. In fact, it stopped out in the valley, this ferocious fire with winds blowing it straight at me, and no one actually knew why. It had never happened before. There was no containment down there. It was just holding. And it went on for ages. It went on for like 10 days, as I said. And eventually on New Year's Day, we decided to return home. And a few days after that, they declared it cautiously contained. They had no idea why. And then a little while after that, the fire went out. And well, it was considered under control, right? And it takes quite a long time to get to that point. But they had no idea why the unstoppable fire had stopped, right? And I was still checking in, and my wall was holding, right? Eventually, I took it down. People ask me, how long do you think that would have held? I'm like, I actually don't know. But eventually, I just brought it down because it was no longer needed. But it was the experience was such an energy for me of command. It was a whole new level of commanding my energy against this fire, right? Against this. I wrote about this, and I outed myself, and this is probably the post you saw. On Facebook, I just wrote all of the story out, and I hit post, right? And I called it Thou Shall Not Pass, that Gandalf scene where he thumps down the staff. It was that sense of command, of just total authority over that energy and against that fire, right? And that post was funny. As soon as the next day I woke up and I was like, oh my God, you just outed yourself so bad on that. And I thought, oh, no one will see it, you know, it will be one of those, you know, posts that just kind of disappears. And that was not what happened. I think about 10,000 people saw that post, and it went everywhere. And a lot of people contacted me, and I was like, whoa, okay. So I tried the experiment to teach this to other people. I realized really quickly everyone was having the same amazing results. I was like, okay, this isn't just me. Everyone can do this. And thus I started teaching it.
Here we are.
Here we
I
are.
know. So cool. And I'm an initiated Shandara weaver.
You are, and a powerful one. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And with a great teacher. So thank you. I appreciate that so much. So yeah, let's dive in. Yeah, I'd love you to share more about the practice.
Yeah.
So the women can get a sense, like, what is this? You know, how do we optimize and take command of this energy?
Yeah. Yeah. So Shandara itself is energy weaving, right? And that practice itself is an embodied sort of a movement practice. If you combined movement and dance with focused energetic work, you have something that looks like energy weaving, right? And it looks different for every weaver. It looks different every weave for every weaver, right? Because it's not performance or choreography. You bring your energy to the moment. What you choose to invoke is your feel sources, what your intention is. Every time you choose different music, even if you choose the same music, your movements are never the same from weave to weave, right? But kind of looks like you're dancing. I guess, is that how you would describe it?
Yeah. Like it's like a energy movement, and yeah, the music really helps. I didn't tell you this one time. I don't think I told you. I wove at the beach, and I hummed the music in my own head, and that actually worked.
Yeah. I've actually been practicing doing some of that myself too, when you just don't have the music. Yeah. So it's pretty versatile, actually. It continues to grow and evolve. It's pretty amazing. But because that's hard to teach here, and I wanted to make sure I was teaching something, I'm going to take a lot of the principles that we use in weaving and bring them outside of the physical act of the weave, so you can still take something and work with it and run with it. And then if you wanted to come and become a weaver, you could come and do that as well. Okay, so I guess the first piece is talking about where is the most powerful position to work with energy where is that most powerful position? Because most of us in modern energetics try to come at it from our heads. It's a mental process. We're thinking it through, or we're visualizing it, or it's quite a heady process. The most powerful place to do any energetic practice, including those visualizations, is from an embodied position within our bodies, right? And so on the physical plane, that is our power position, is within our bodies, okay? And we want to bring our higher selves and other fuel sources into our bodies, but we want to work the energy in our bodies, right? So that's the first really important shift, is to get out of your head, right? Even if you're sitting on the mat meditating and doing some energetic visualization, you want to bring yourself out of your head, breathe yourself down into your body, okay? And I think that's one of the reasons that weaving gets you there so fast, because you're moving, right? So those 5 main pillars that we work with, where we interact with energy on the physical plane, we have movement, right? And so that we do it in weaving, but they do it in Qigong or Tai Chi, right? Like that, movement is one of the places. Even people who go for a jog or a walk to shift their state, same thing, it's the movement, right? And then we have sound is another way that we work with energy on the physical plane. So in weaving, we use music, right? But as we were just saying, you can hum, you can chant, probably do it with singing bowls, like whatever. But you're using the sound vibration to start to weave with it, to start to allow your energy to raise, right? And then we do have visualization and all those intuitive languages. So there is visualization work when we're weaving, as you would know. And actually, we usually get really powerful visions when we weave, really powerful channeled experiences in the middle of the weave. And we use intention. Intention's a really big one. What else was there? Oh, breath. So breath work is used, right? So those 5 pillars, if you look at any energetic modalities currently out there now in the world that we know of, right, they'll use at least one of those 5, and sometimes they mix a couple of them together, right? But those are the ways that we interface with energy. And so Shandara uses all 5 in that organic process. It ends up all weaving together, so it's not a heady sort of a process, but all 5 of those elements combine. So you want to look at what you're using as the way that you're interacting with energy, and make sure that you're doing it from an embodied position, whatever it is, right? So the second piece that's really important is understanding that your energetic system is like an organ in your body, like your respiratory system or your circulatory system. Like it's a whole unique system in and of itself, right? And it has an autonomic part, much like, you know, your heartbeat or your lungs, right? Our energetic system also has an autonomic system. It's always receiving and projecting, always. And it's got a pleasure pulse within it, always pulsing to your intuitive guidance. Yes, no, yes, no. Like if you tune in, that's always happening, right? Always your guidance system. So it has an autonomic function. And like our respiratory system, our energetic system breathes, it cycles, right? Between a sense of expanding and contracting, right? Always, we're in expansion and then contraction. And like our breath, we can't always breathe out and then never breathe in, right? Like at some point we have to breathe in. So modern society has us always wanting to be in expansion. Go, go, go. I want to be in expansion. I want to be in expansion. And the contraction is seen as this, oh no, how can I put off my contraction? Like, how can I avoid it, right? And the key is not to avoid the contraction. The key is to embrace and work with the contraction as part of your energetic cycle, a natural state, rather than going into a forced contraction because you've held your breath for so long, you've left it for so long. Forced contractions feel crappy, right? They're not fun. But if you understand your energetic state, and you can work with it, you can put yourself into conscious contraction. And so as you start to work with your energetic cycle, everything smooths out. There's no roller coaster anymore, right? Your contractions don't take you down into the depths of crappiness anymore. They just roller coaster gently, yeah? And sometimes, often they cycle faster too. You don't get stuck in contraction for days and days on end trying to work out how to get out. And of course, if you're a weaver, you know how to get out of and shift that state in 10 or 15 minutes, right?
Yeah. And I want to speak to that for a second because I've had a couple of quite intense experiences since I've now known how to weave. And it's even as I say that, it's like the weaving actually reminds me of what I'm capable of. And what you do is create that container to guide, you know, in my experience, guide me more deeply into my own power, right? Because because last year I worked with a coach, and I felt I'm so sensitive to being, I suppose, misled or influenced off my path. I'm so sensitive that I can sort of tune into all these things, and I was a bit scared to dive into energetic work, going, is this going to take me out of myself, or is this going to lead me astray? And actually, I just want, and that's not what I was going to originally say, and I'll say that in a moment, but I just need to speak to this, that it actually deepens me into my own power, and I can confidently and in a more sovereign way fully claim that. So I just wanted to mention that. But in terms of intense things that's happened, I had a really intense experience early this year, quite heartbreaking and traumatic in some ways. And what happened is I took it into a weave. I was just feeling a lot of energy rising within me, and I had a lot of emotional energy, and I took it into a weave, and it was just so deep, the process that I went into in the weave, where I actually ended up on the floor on all fours, just heaving and crying, and so much energy was actually pouring through me. And it was more than just the experience. It was almost like it had unlocked any other residue of grief and heartbreak that had been sitting there behind the surface. And the weaving allowed my energetic system to be able to release that and, you know, pour it all through. And then, like, literally, it probably took like maybe 10, 15 minutes or so, but within a half an hour, I was complete, and I had all these epiphanies and wisdom come through about how the purpose that had played in my life. And it was just so incredible to consciously and purposely step into a space to work with the energy around something that's arising, and how fast it can shift and how powerfully it can shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned a lot of really powerful points there. So the first is our ability to bring what is within us already to the surface and allow it to move, right? Energy wants to be in constant motion. And our predominant emotional pain is when we try to jam it inside us. I don't want to feel it, I don't want to feel it. We try to hold it down, right? And that's the painful path, right? But when we take what's there and we weave it, we move it through our body. When we're weaving, we flush a huge amount of energy through our energetic core all the time. And so we alchemize what's there. And as you were saying, behind it often comes anything else in resonance that's ready to go with it, right? You know, and so sometimes that's our past stuff, old patterns for us shift. I've had so many weavers shift patterns and just gone, I don't get it. It's just not even there anymore. It's just gone. How the hell did that happen, right? Sometimes we have lineage stuff, ancestral pattern just move through us and heal through us as a result of that movement that's happening, right?
Yeah, I don't want to speak to that.
Mhm.
Because for me, I was also aware that it wasn't even my ancestry, it was actually a collective consciousness thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of light workers on the planet right now are healing collective ancestral wounding as part of their service, right? It's just an agreement, like not consciously, but like as an agreement, they're doing that. So a lot of what's sitting in sensitive, energetic people's fields right now isn't even all theirs, right? Which is why clearing your field is so critical, because we're holding all sorts of stuff, collective stuff in present time, but also ancestral patterns healing. Yeah, and then the last piece is usually behind that flow, as you said, comes on that same channel all our intuitive wisdom, right? Because it flows through that energetic core. And so we end up in a higher, we've lifted our vibration through the weave. We're usually feeling way calmer, expansive, like more settled, grounded, and we start to lift that vibration and we access higher self. Right? And of course, we can invoke higher self, and you know that we do when we weave. We intentionally bring it in as a fuel source. But even if we don't, it rises behind the movement of the emotion. And all of a sudden, we understand that higher perspective. We understand what was going on and why it happened. And we see what was there for them and what was there for us. Like, it just helps us complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about our energetic state, but expanding and contracting, right?
Yeah.
We need to understand that. And that's one of the pieces of flow, is creating flow. Because you can be in expansion and contraction and be in flow. You can actually be in flow and contraction, right? It's different. It doesn't look like flow and expansion, but flow is just moving with the same direction as the energetic current moving through your body instead of trying to go upstream, right? And the other key to flow is what we just talked about pretty much, is when you weave, you're moving so much energy through the movement as you weave, through the ribbon dance, through the techniques that we use, right? That you are flushing a huge amount of life force through your body and you come into flow, right? So if you're going through a really tricky period in your life and you weave every day for several days, you'll just feel yourself shift into flow, right? It can't not happen when you do that process. So, but if you're not weaving, you still want to understand your energetic state of expansion and contraction and not fight that process, actually work with it. And that requires also a level of self-compassion and self-trust. You know, I think a lot of time we stay in expansion because we have deadlines, or we're scared that if I drop the ball now, I can't, like I don't have time to drop the ball, right? And this is why we're also in time scarcity. This is why we're like, not enough time, you know. Once you start to work with your energetic cycle, you start going, oh my God, there's more time for everything. And it actually does fit. And I can actually take this day off and the world doesn't collapse. In fact, I come back more grounded. I come back in an authentic new flush of expansion, right? So we want to work with our energetic systems and not fight it, is really the bottom line here. Yeah. So the other piece around starting to develop next level energetics is raising your energetic capacity. Right? Now, this is something that happens again naturally when you weave because you're flushing so much energy, right? But you want your energetic capacity to expand, right? And energetic capacity is two ways, two directions. First of all, the energy that you can hold comfortably in your body without wobbles, without like, whoa, that you're generating yourself, right? So when you do any energetic practice, you're shifting, creating energy, right? And you want to be able to, ideally, if you want to create those miracle results, those ones you go, holy crap, did I do that, right? Then you want a lot of fuel source. You want to have a large energetic capacity to hold a lot of energy in your body comfortably, right? And so in Shandara, we raise energy. We don't just work with what's hanging around us in the room. Like I see lots of energetic practices where they just start like the technique, and they just use whatever's floating around them, or heaven forbid, they draw on their personal energy reserve, right? And then they get burnt out and depleted, and they get enmeshed in their clients' energy fields, and all sorts of crazy things happen, right? You don't want to do that. You're using a fraction of what's available to you when you do that, right? Instead, we want to raise energy using those 5 pillars, right? You could do it with breath work. You can raise a huge amount of energy sitting still and breathing correctly, right? Just your breath. But you want to raise energy. You want to invoke fuel sources. So again, in weaving, we invoke many different fuel sources depending on what we feel inspired. We invoke earth energy. We invoke higher self a lot. So we bring higher self down into an embodied state in our bodies. And we weave up against her. We allow her to weave, right? And those are typically really euphoric, amazing power weaves when we do that, right? But we use a lot of fuel sources. We bring them into our bodies, and then we raise and build them. We amplify them. So we're building our capacity to hold a lot of energy in us comfortably, right? Not without, sometimes when weavers start, they feel such a rush of energy. I'm curious, Avalon, if you've had this experience, but I even have some women come back from their first weaves and they're almost like vibrating. Right? They're like, oh my God, the energy's so high. And that grounds after a while because your capacity expands and you can hold it more strongly. But initially it's like, whoa, you can't help but not tangibly feel energy when you weave. And I think that's one of the really powerful pieces. It takes you out of, did I do it? Did it work? Was there anything there? Like, I believe in energy, but God, I wish I could like feel it, like really know it, right? And when you're in an embodied position and you do this work, there's no way you cannot tangibly have a relationship in your body with that energy. It's there, right? You feel it, you know it. And that's actually powerful for your confidence as well, your belief, right? Which builds some stepping stones to building your power, right? Which we need to talk about in a sec, because commanding your power is actually one of the key pieces. So you want to raise your energy and build your capacity. That gives you fuel source to project into whatever your energetic modality is, right? Whatever it is, whatever's in your toolbox, full spectrum from healing to manifesting, channeling, you name it, you can do anything in a weave, right? Once you've got that fuel source, you can direct it into whatever you want to direct it into. And so I give lots of frames when I'm teaching, but I'm like really early on, I'm like, okay, you all need to learn how to create your own weaving rituals so that you just use your fuel source however feels right to you, right? And you, Avalon, you had so many years of ritual behind you already that you just ducked to water on that one. You were like off and running. So we raise that energy, we build that capacity. The other reason we want to build capacity is once that capacity starts to build, it also means that we can cope with huge amounts of energy coming at us externally from ourselves, right? And I think especially this year more than ever, that's critical, right? Because the amount of collective tidal energy that's flooding the planet right now, which is not actually in the highest vibration currently, is huge. And if you're a spongy, empathic type person, then you're getting bombarded and sucked up with all of this energy all the time, right? And so your ability to hold comfortably and have that coming at you without it like overtaking you is a really important piece of building that capacity. And it builds towards sovereignty, right? Which is where we want to go. We want to have an independent, self-determining, self-regulating, self-healing, energetic system that isn't completely at the whim of everything around us. We're still going to be receiving and interpreting energy all the time, right? That's just part of our bodies, right? Our bodies are natural channels. But we want to be sovereign in our ability to work with, to have our energetic system thrive and be vibrant, right? And so part of that is building our capacity so that we're not quite so fragile. And part of that is as we come into our power, which is where we're going to talk about now, right? We also become stronger. We bring our higher self into embodied state more. We understand, when the more we do that and we clear our energy, the more we clearly sense and understand and know our energy, who we are, right? We feel it in the way we go, this is who I really am, right? I'm here with my higher self embodied, everything's moving through me, I'm clear, I don't have all this collective stuff happening. This is me, this is my energetic system, right? And when we start to have enough experiences of that, we start to move into sovereignty. We start to understand this is me, and now it's so clear when I feel different, well, hold on, this isn't me anymore, right? And we start to have that relationship just through repetition, right? And the big one, the last big one is commanding power, right? And commanding power is a massive one. And I think, Avalon, it might have been like you already had so much skill in working energetically and raising vast volumes. And you're such a channel for huge amounts of creative energy flowing through you all the time, right? You wanted to like focus it in instead of having it go in every direction. Focus it in and contain it and give yourself potency and power, right? So when we build that much energy inside our weaves and we're vibrating with it, we can feel it all through our body. We feel it around us in the cast space that we've created, like it's so there. When we bring it all into our body, we use breath work, we bring it down into our body, we bring it into different power centers, womb, heart. We allow that divide to bridge. We focus our energy. Don't want to get too technical, but we bring it all into our body. We focus it, and then we cast it with authority. And this is the piece here that often creates problems for people. If you truly command that energy, this energy you just created, it's yours. It's you. It is your energy to work with, right? But we have such a funky relationship with power. Right? It was like, oh, and this old paradigm is power over, but we have a very weird dynamic with being powerful and having power and commanding power. You know, all of those are very strong, quite masculine words, and some of us wobble on it, you know, not knowing how we want to approach it. And a lot of us have lack of belief. We have doubt, right? And you watch, when you have total command, like when I did the wall out over the fire, I had total command there. I pretty much had nothing to lose. It was kind of do or die, right? I was like, no, this is how it is. This is how it is. And that level of command. And that's a different level of command to, I really want to manifest $5,000. But in my head, I'm going, I've failed this before. I'm not really sure. Like there's a wobble, right? And it's not the same command. It's not the same cast or projection of the energy. So commanding power becomes a massive journey, and claiming your power is a journey. And one of the reasons that opens up so quickly, just in a few weeks for weavers, is when you're in cast space, and you would know this, Avalon, when you're in cast space and you bring the energy out of your body and you're moving it in cast space, you feel yourself commanding that energy. In that circle, you own that energy. You can move it here, move it there, like you can bring it in, pull it out, like you own it and you are commanding it. And for a lot of women, that is a really potent first experience of, holy crap, I'm commanding this energy. They feel the energy, they know it's there, it's real, and oh my God, I'm in command of it, right? And that's really powerful, an important piece when we come to projecting that energy out into whatever we're doing, healing, manifesting, whatever. It's that real command piece.
That in itself is massive in a world where women have actually not been in our power generally for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So to actually have that embodied experience, like no one can take it away. You actually have complete freedom of choice of what you do with that energy, whether you bring it in to heal yourself or whether you send it to something or someone, or, you know, invoke or invite. Like there's so many options, right? Because it's like, oh my God, there's all this energy to play with. And you step into that true sovereignty and choice and power.
Yeah.
It's just like next level epic. That's why you're here. That's why I'm inviting you here, because I want every woman to have, I mean, and men too, but my focus is women, right? So
Yeah.
to have this ability, because we are the creatresses, we are the birthing channel for the new paradigm, for the new visions coming through.
Absolutely. We have so much creative energy, so much that can come through us. And we've also had a very disempowering relationship around power for a long time. And it feeds through in all sorts of stuff. As soon as the journey with power happens, even in the very, that first month of weaving, it nearly always brings up people's stuff. And it brings up witch wound, and it brings up all these places where we've been disconnected and disempowered, right? And for some, it's a really big journey. Some, it's like, holy crap, and I just totally claimed that, and that was so powerful, right? And when you cast from that space, it's euphoric, right? I actually laugh when I watch things on, like, TV and stuff, where someone performs some magical act and then they're so depleted and they have to, they pass out or whatever, right? I'm so euphoric and energized at the end of every weave. I mean, no matter how big the work, or no matter how self-directed or external, I'm invigorated. I have a ton of energy at the end of a week, right? But so no matter whether you embrace that power as an experience of, oh my God, look at what is possible for me, right? Like that euphoric, or some women have a journey around, this is kind of scary for me to claim this, I have to redefine everything about what I am capable of doing, really what is possible for me.
Yeah, because it's also about suddenly you're responsible for the power that you have and all the choices that you've made. And that can be quite confronting if you have operated from a state of like kind of reacting to circumstances. Suddenly, who am I when I'm powerful?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's often a journey that goes parallel to the weaving, the actual act of weaving. Weaving spills out, like in the weave, we get all of these feelings, and it then shifts out of the weave into our life, right? So we see our ability to manifest rapidly escalate in crazy ways, right? We heal things spontaneously heal in our body, our physical bodies, or patterns drop away and we go, whoa, that's just gone, right? Like I've just let go of that. I've held that for 20 years and now it feels resolved, right? It all spills out outside of the weave. And so does that journey around power, right? And sometimes the fear of it too. It's like, how am I going to do this? And I think sometimes the weaving, because we weave and we bring in so much divine energy, and we use the safety. Well, we use ritual for amplification, right? We use that to amplify. There's many layers of amplification, the way we can build and raise more and more energy. One of them is ritual, right? It focuses our intention and it brings sacredness and divinity to the space. So sometimes in the way that energy work is done in mainstream, because we wanted to reintroduce energy work, but it was so persecuted historically by science and religion that we ripped the energy out of its context, out of the holistic framework, and we just took the energetic technique, right? And so we could transplant it and it could be heard, it could be received and not be persecuted. But in that process, we left behind some of those powerful pieces. And the ritual piece allows us to bring in a container of, well, first deep intention, which amplifies immediately and focuses, right? But it also brings in divinity. It brings in a sacredness. And that actually creates a lot of safety inside that circle in the weave for women to relax into their power.
Yeah, that's huge. And that even that place of safety, and this is in all the work that I do, not just the energy weaving, but even just any space where we can drop into safety, actually naturally allows the power to start to emerge when that you know, that fear has gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So fear is like such a huge for all of our energetic work, for everything, right? Not just energy, for everything in
Yeah.
life. It's like it's the brakes for everything. So if you can create enough safety, then your natural power, your natural, you know, who you really are can rise, right? So we took all of those pieces, and obviously Avalon and I spoke about what it is to weave, right? Because we do all happens across the weaving journey. It is the most powerful way I know. I know a lot of weavers who have written and said, you know what, I've dropped all my spiritual gymnastics. Like they were spending hours with a gazillion different techniques and modalities, right? Trying to cover all their bases, right? And they let all that go. And now Shandara does it all, right? Because all of that exists in the space of this modality, right?
Yeah.
And of course, its potential, I mean, it tends to elevate, right? You get clearer on your purpose. As your power rises and your focus sets in, you become more focused. You have experiences, and I don't really want to use all the terminology that's out there at the moment, but you have these higher consciousness experiences, 5D, right? You have all of those experiences. You sit in that state. And that's why I think the weave becomes so euphoric for so many women, because they've risen their consciousness up to that level, and they're sitting in such a beautiful space, right? Sometimes, especially for some women, if they feel safe and they weave outside, their light bodies pretty much just dissolve into oneness with everything. Like they're so connected, and it becomes this elevated state, right? And from there, you activate all sorts of stuff within you, you know, so many spontaneous healing abilities, your channeling abilities suddenly escalate, and it all unravels from there. But you need to have the foundation in place, and then it can all just blossom as it's uniquely meant to blossom for you, right?
Yeah. And
Really,
it also feels so fun.
yeah,
It's just fun. Like it's fun. It's amazing. You get to listen to the music that you love and really go into it and move your body. So it's like not only like as you mentioned, it's every level, like physical, emotional, spiritual, even mental, because you like deepen ability to focus. And for me, that's been actually a really big part of it, because I suppose I tend to go into that like more highly sensitive ADD kind of way of being, which a lot of the women that I work with are as well, like just so aware of so many different things all at the same time. It's like when you really bring that energy back in and focus and command it back into this kind of cohesive space, everything just amplifies, like not in a way of overwhelm, but in a way of like deepening. And for me, because I love writing, if I do a weave before I write, the writing just flows so beautifully, and like I type so fast, my hands just like everything, like it just optimizes all my functions.
yeah, yeah. You become such a clear channel, right? And I think that that aware of so much on so many levels is so common for anyone who's a creative visionary type person, right? Which is typically the women that you're working with, right?
Mm.
But they're and I'm like that too. That took a long time for me to go, whoa, there's so many things. I could download this. Like I could go anywhere, right? And that makes us a bit more scattered, right? We have access to a vast amount of energy, but we're trying to put it into a gazillion projects. But instead, when we come into our focus, we get clearer on what is truly our magic, right? Because that's the whole weavers, they all take their unique path into higher service, right? Whatever their higher service and contribution is, it comes from their blueprint, right? So all you're doing is accessing what is your purpose at a clearer, higher level. Right? What do I want to contribute? What is mine to give? And I
Yeah.
think that just really focuses through the whole act, the energetic sovereignty, knowing who you really are, like, whoa, this is really me, right? As separate to them, this is me. And then commanding that power and all the other pieces we talked about. And the
Mm.
other piece is how, like you said, it's fun, right? And it can be a really joyful, I started teaching in the last circle that I did about joyful healing, right? And it landed such a chord, right? But we think healing has to be this hard, drudgerous, difficult, like we're kind of resistant to it a lot of the time. Like, oh, I got to do the healing work, right? I mean, there are some people who really throw themselves into it, but for a lot of people, it's kind of a scary sort of endeavor. And yet, it can be such a joyful process if we can relax. And the weaving really supports that, right? You know, I've supported women with a lot of sexual trauma, and they come back, they come back into their bodies, right? Most of them are so disembodied, like they're sometimes not even, like not even just in their heads, they're sometimes not even in their bodies, they're like projected outside of themselves slightly. So first step, coming back into your body is just a massive step, and coming back to that in a self-loving way, coming back to that and invoking like any of the divine sources, the goddesses, invoking your higher self, invoking the divine masculine and weaving up against it is often a massive journey for someone who's healing that sort of trauma, right?
Mm.
But then when they start to move and they just allow themselves to relax into the weave, and then they come back to me, you know, 3 or 4 weeks later, and they go, I can't believe how much has shifted. I'm kind of conscious. I can feel it all shifting and moving, but I'm relaxed. Like it's not this hard process. And I
Yeah.
think that's possible, right? I think that our healing doesn't have to be, maybe again, a sign of the escalating times, but I think our relationship to our healing is shifting too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it's a modality that's time has come.
Yes.